Good morning, Morai Rabotai. We are continuing on Mesechet Avodah Zarah, and we are on top of Daf Nun Bet, Amud Bet, 6 lines down from the top of the Amud. Today's Amud is being learned. L'schut refuah shelema av Rachel Simcha Bat Nahid, and also has been dedicated for Chodesh Adar Aleph, for refuah shelema av Meir ben Tova, and Sarah Rachel Bat Nora, and for Hatzlacha av Yigal ben Devorah. Should be Matzliach in everything that they do. Amen. So we have a new question in the Gemara when it comes to the items used for Avodah Zarah, and the Gemara references a very interesting story that happened, and the Gemara in Menachot Daf Kuftet explains this story. Ba'amine Rabbi Yossi ben Shaul mi Rabbi Yossi ben Shaul asked the Rabbi, Kelim sheshimshu bahen bebet chonyo, mahu shishtameshu bahen bebet hamikdash. The vessels that they used for the korbanot brought in a place called Bet Chonyo, can you use those vessels in Bet HaMikdash for korbanot? Now, what is Bet Chonyo? Bet Chonyo was an altar and basically like a miniature Bet HaMikdash, for lack of a better term, that was built in Alexandria of Egypt. And it was built by Chonyo, which is the younger son of Shimon HaTzadik. What was this story? The story and the nature of the story is Machloket Tanaim between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda in Mesechet Menachot Daf Kuftet. What is agreed upon is that Chonyo was the younger son, and Shimon HaTzadik chose him to be the Kohen Gadol instead of himself. And somehow the sibling rivalry caused him to run away from Yerushalayim and go to Alexandria of Mitzrayim, of Egypt, and he built this massive structure called Bet Chonyo, in which he brought korbanot on the Mizbeach. Now Rabbi Meir holds that this was because he wanted the Kehuna Gedolah, and his father gave it to him. But his brother, Shimi, that was jealous, he basically set him up to make him the target of other Kohanim with misinformation, and he ran for his dear life, and he went off the path, and he built this structure for Avodah Zarah. That's how hurt and how thing it was. That's the Shita of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda holds no. He was a very special person. Even though that his father chose him, he didn't want to take the great kavod when his brother was 2 years older than him, was still there, so he gave it to his brother Shimi. But then he became jealous when he saw that, later on, and therefore he wanted to do something. He was turned around against him, and he had to run away. And he built a Mizbeach, and this whole structure of Bet Chonyo, not for Avodah Zarah Chas v'Shalom, but it was l'Shamayim. He built his own structure. It's still asur to do that, because you cannot bring, when there is Bet HaMikdash, you cannot bring Shchutei Chutz, you cannot build any structure of any sort, but it was not for Avodah Zarah, it was the Shamayim. His kavanah for bringing all this korbanot and so on was a positive kavanah l'Shamayim. So that's the basic gist of this story, as brought in Mesechet Menachot, as Machloket Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. So says the Gemara, now can you use the vessels, if somebody brings you some of the vessels that he had copied, exactly like the vessels of Bet HaMikdash, can you take some of those and now bring it to Bet HaMikdash and say, hey, this works, let's now dedicate this to Bet HaMikdash and use it, why not? So says the Gemara like this. Now you understand, you have context, you understand what the Gemara is saying. We are asking this only in the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, who holds that Bet Chonyo was not a Bet Avodat Kochavim. It was actually the Shamayim. He built it for Hashem, L'Shem Shamayim, and the Korbanot, which were brought there, were L'Shem Shamayim as well. Still the question, says the Gemara, what's the question? What is why not? If something was used for Avodat Hashem, even though that you did it in a wrong way, what exactly is the question? This is Mesechet Avodah Zarah. It's not Mesechet Bet Chonio if it was L'Shem Shamayim. So says the Gemara like this. Ditnan. Kohanim sheshimeshu bebet chonio. Imagine the Kohanim who served as priests, as Kohanim, in the structure of Bet Chonio that he built. Lo yeshameshu b'mikdash b'Yerushalayim. That they can never be appointed as Kohanim and work in the Bet HaMikdash. Never. Cannot do it. When they did tshuva afterwards, doesn't make a difference. They have disqualified themselves eternally for being ever able to work in the Bet HaMikdash, says the Mishnah. Of course, goes without saying that if these Kohanim have dedicated themselves to be priests of Avodah Zarah, that they can never go back, even after tshuva, and be Kohanim for Bet HaMikdash. They have forfeited the rights of being Kohanim by the mere fact of being Kohanim for Avodah Zarah. Now, they don't lose their other rights of Kehuna. They could still eat teruma if they do tshuva. They could still have other rights, and according to many Rishonim, they could even do Nesiat Kapayim and all those things. This Shitav, some of the Geonim, Rab Netrunai Gaon, Rab Achai Gaon in Shiltot, and the Rambam, they hold that even for Birkat Kohanim, they are disqualified forever, but not for other things. So, but you see the concept that something that is considered a kavod for them to serve in the Bet HaMikdash, they lose that by mere fact of being. Now, this Mishnah holds Bet Chonio is Avodah Zarah or not? Of course, he holds that's not Bet Avodah Zarah, because the Mishnah says even the Kohanim who worked in Bet Chonio, they can't serve in Bet HaMikdash, and goes without saying Kohanim who served in Bet Avodah Zarah. So of course the Mishnah holds that Bet Chonio, like Rabbi Yehuda, is not Avodah Zarah. And yet, even though that's not Avodah Zarah, the Kohanim who serve there, they can never work in Bet HaMikdash. So maybe the vessels also should be the same halacha. And that any vessel, any kli, that has been used in Bet Chonio should not be able to be used in Bet HaMikdash. Or maybe it's different. Maybe a person with free will, it could be punished, it could be knast, fined, for choosing to go and serve in a place of Isur. And by the vessel, well, Meikar Adin, when Mideoraita is fine, so let's keep everything on a Deoraita level. You don't have to knas a kli. You don't have to fine a kli. So those are the two stadim of this question. Says the Gemara, let's read it inside. Is it only limited to Kohanim because they are Bnei De'ah, they have free will, they have understanding, they have made a deliberate choice to go and work in Bet Chonio, and therefore we knas them that they can never work in Bet HaMikdash, but maybe kelim abar kelim lo, but we don't do this for the vessels, or dilma, or maybe there's no difference. Lo shena, Chazal did not differentiate anything that was used in Bet Chonio is a disrespect to be ever used in Bet HaMikdash. And there we have our question. Amaleh, so remember, this is him asking this question to Rebbe. And the Gemara explained why it's even a question. Now, what did Rebbe answer him? Rebbe answered him, Asurim hem, they are asur, the vessels are asur to be used in the Bet HaMikdash. Umikraya beyadenu, Rebbe says, I had a pasuk for this, to prove it from the pasuk, and I do not remember the pasuk. Right? Heartwarming. Even Rebbe forgot something. So, there's a very interesting Rambam. Rambam was asked by Rabbi Pinchas Dayan, this is printed in the letters of the Rambam. He challenged him why he didn't write sources for the psakim that he has in Yad HaChazakah. Imagine how there are more perushim written on the Rambam than there are on Shas. And part of it is because he didn't explain necessarily where he gets it from, how it's developed. And Rambam answers, he says, look, I'm writing a chibur. When you write a chibur, not a perush, you don't write the reasons. And he says, I am intending to write at some point a separate sefer discussing all of the sources and how I got to this halachot and so on. Because he was asking him for a source in a halakha that was passed in the Rambam. And then the Rambam says to him, he says, well, I don't want to forget. And it's so much honesty and integrity and humility of the Rambam, you see. He says, let me also tell you that just this other day, somebody came to me asking me for a source of something I wrote in Yad HaChazakah, and I couldn't remember off the top of my head where it is. So I told him, look in Sanhedrin. He said, I did. It's not there. So he says, look in the Yerushalmi Sanhedrin. No, it's not there. Tosefta, not there. This Mesechet, not there. That Mesechet. Rambam goes through a number of options that he gave him, was asking him. I said, I got frustrated. I couldn't recall where I got this from, the source of it. And I told the individual, said, go, when it comes to me, I'll send for you. And says, later on, I remember that it was in an off sugya, in a random place, not necessarily part of the main sugya. In Mesechet Gitin, I think he writes, he was, and I sent to him for it. So Rambam says, people forget things, right? People forget things. Actually, in Gemara Mesechet Shabbat Daf Gimal, speaking about Rebbe Yehuda Nasi, his top student was Rabbi Chia. He was a Talmid Chaver of Rebbe. And Rabbi Chia's nephew was Rav and Shmuel. So Rav was peppering Rebbe with questions, from all over the place. And after the shiur, he was chastised by his uncle. He says, how many times I have to tell you, when you're learning a sugya, don't ask a question from somewhere else that the Rebbe is not holding in that sugya. He says, now, Rebbe happens to be, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi happens to be a Gavra Rabbah, he's a tremendous person, so he knows things, but if a person is not like that, and then you ask him a question, his mind is not in the sugya, tafus, and then he's going to be embarrassed, or he's going to say something that's not 100% correct. Therefore, he should not be doing that, right? The humanity of human. So it says the Gemara, it says, I don't remember where the pasuk is, but I know the halacha is, it's asur. You cannot use these vessels who have been used in Bet Chonyo for the Bet HaMikdash. So now, he wasn't going to let him go. Rabbi Yossi ben Shaul had come prepared with his homework. So says to him, Amaleh, Iteve, he says, he asked him a question. He said, the pasuk says, Kol hakelim asher hizniach hamelech Achaz, all of the vessels of the Bet HaMikdash that the king Achaz had made disgraced, b'malchuto b'ma'alo, when he was the king in his rebelling against Hashem, hechanu ve'ikdashnu. They are reporting, again, King Achaz was a Rasha Merusha. His son was the greatest tzaddik that we had after David HaMelech. Who was his son? Chizkiyahu HaMelech. So when he took over the Malchut, he made a revolution of complete 180 in the entirety of not just the Hanhagav Klal Yisrael, but also in the knowledge base that he turned a community of Avodah Zarah to a community of Talmidei Chachamim, to the degree that the Gemara says, Batku midan vad Beersheva. They checked from one end of Eretz Yisrael to the other end of Eretz Yisrael, and there was not a tinok v'tinoket. They couldn't find a child even that did not know the most complex parts of halachot, of tumah v'tahara, and that's because he enforced learning Torah and yediat Torah. That's, the Gemara says it was supposed to be Mashiach. Tremendous. So, but in the beginning, there's this pasuk that talks about rededication of the Bet HaMikdash from something that was used for Avodah Zarah to something that was rededicated for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and it says that Kol HaKelim Asher Izniach HaMelech Achaz, all of the kelim that he made tameh, basically, he ignored them and he had used them for abomination. Hechanu vehikdashnu vehinam nifnei mizbeach Hashem. So we're ready now with kelim, with brand new kelim that have been prepared for Bet HaMikdash, for the Mizbeach. Now the simple read of the Pasuk would indicate that what is going on over here, what's going on is, they took the kelim that Achaz had used for Avodah Zarah, they now did Hechanu, they toveled them for not having Tum'ah, Vehikdashnum, and they now anointed them with Shemen HaMishcha again for being used for Bet HaMikdash once again. That's the direction that you would take if you will read the Pasuk on a simple read. So says Rabbi Yossi ben Shaul to Rabbi, says, wait a second. This sounds to me like you had something that was used on a Mizbeach for Avodah Zarah, and now you take it and you dedicate it for Mizbeach for Hashem. Isn't that exactly, or even better, much better than the case of Bet Chonyo? Bet Chonyo was something that was used on a Mizbeach, not even for Avodah Zarah. And yet you say it's Asur. And I have this Pasuk in Tanakh that seems to indicate that even with things that were used by Achaz for Avodah Zarah, they could be fixed, and you tovel them, and you rededicate them, and you could use them. Now, a surprising answer from Rabbi, who was so excited to hear this Pasuk, he says, thank you, Chazaku Baruch, that's exactly the Pasuk that I had in mind and I had forgotten, which proves my point against exactly what you said. You misread the Pasuk. So he says, Chazaku Baruch, thank you so much. Baruch atah le'shamayim, Amaleh, he says to him, Baruch atah le'shamayim, you should be blessed. Shechzarta li avedati, you returned to me my lost object, lost Pasuk that I had forgotten. That is the Pasuk that I was referring to. That I told you I had a Pasuk and I forgot. That is it. And this is the way you should read it. Hechanu means shegenaznum. Says we took all the vessels that were used by Achaz, your father, and we did geniza on them, and we hid them away. Vehikdashnu, and when we says vehikdashnu means we prepared new kelim, that none of those kelim of your father's time are any more available. They're all put away as they should be, and we have now new kelim that we have anointed, and they're ready to go for avodah. Shikdashnu acherim tachtehim, and therefore, says Rabbi to Rabbi Yossi ben Shaul, says, what do you see from here? That you cannot fix the kelim, and you need to do geniza on them, and you have to have new ones. So that's my proof that even the kelim of Bechonyo cannot be used. So says the Gemara, lema mesayale. Let's suggest that this shita, this pasuk, this shita, Rabbi mesayale, it helps this Mishnah that we learned about the Malchut Bet Chashmonai. Again, because Chashmonaim were a very similar situation. They came, right, Timu Tashmanim, the Greeks had defiled the Bet HaMikdash. The Greeks were not interested in destroying stuff that were nice. Right? They were all about beauty and aesthetics, and So unlike Malchut Bavel and Parasu Madai, they and Edom, they were very much for beautiful things. So they came to Bet HaMikdash, they said, oh, this is gorgeous. We got to turn this into our temple. And they were bringing pigs and who knows what. So when the Chashmonaim took over again, they had the same question. What exactly do we do with the Mizbeach, for instance, that was there? The Mizbeach used to be, prior to that, a Mizbeach that we built. Avanim shelemot tivneh. It was beautiful, massive stones, right? And now this Mizbeach is being used for altar for Avodah Zarah, v'dvarim temeim, can we just use the same Mizbeach? Can we do something to them and use it? Or do we have to get rid of it? Well, what's the halacha? So says the Mishnah, you know what they did? Listen to what they did. Mizrachit Sefonit, they were in Ezrat Nashim, in the Azarot of the Beit HaMikdash. The first one, the courtyard, is Ezrat Nashim, and 4 corners of it were 4 lishkot. Every lishka, every area that there was a room over there was used for a different thing. So it says the Mishnah, in the lishka of Mizrachit Sefonit, in the northeast one, Bach Ganzu Bet Chashmonai, Et Avnei HaMizbeach Sheshiksu Anshe Yavan. They took all the Avanim of Mizbeach that was there at the time of Yavanim, and they buried them there. They were gonez. They put them in the Lishkaf Sfonit Mizrachit. Right? Mizrachit Sefonit, rather. Says the Gemara, Ve'amar Rav Sheshet. And Rav Sheshet said, how did they defile the Mizbeach? Sheshiksu Ravodat Kochavim. Because they were using the Avnei Mizbeach for bringing korbanot, dedicated altar for Avodat Kochavim, for Avodah Zarah. Amar Rav Papa, so what does this indicate, by the way? It indicates that something that was used for Avodah Zarah, you have to do geniza on them. Right? So let us say that this is a support for this Shita of Rebbe and vice versa. The Gemara says, no, it's very different.
So they took down the whole altar?
They took down and they put all of them, they built a new altar from new stones, everything. So the Papa says, no, that's, you don't understand, that's very different. Hatam krash kach vedarash. Over there, they had a pasuk that explained this very thing. Dichtiv, ubao ba pritzim vechileluha. That when they came to Beit HaMikdash, they were mechalel the Kedusha of Beit HaMikdash, it became chulin. In other words, when they came, now you could talk about this at length, of something that the Ran writes in Mesechet Nidarim, Daf Kafchet, of Torah's recognition of something called kibush milchama, that when you go to war and you conquer something or somewhere, that becomes halachically yours. Talk about that as well, but here is not even that. The pasuk says, "Ba'u ba pritzim v'chilelua." That when the pritzim, when the goyim came to Beit HaMikdash, they made everything chulin, no longer kadosh. So therefore, it's no longer the kedusha of the Beit HaMikdash for those things, and hence they could dedicate it to the Avodah Zarah. Therefore, it's a problem because it's theirs to dedicate to Avodah Zarah, and hence it's the problem that they had to deal with it. They had to be gonez the Avnei Mizbeach. So says the Gemara, Amri, Hechi Navid. When they came in, the Hashmonaim came in. They said, "What do we do with this massive Mizbeach? Nitberinhu. If we want to bring a goy, break them." Right, so no longer now it's considered Avodah Zarah, we'll mebatel Avodah Zarah, and then put it back together. It will be used for Avnei Mizbeach. You can't do that because the pasuk says Mizbeach has to be built avanim shelemot. It has to be built with full stones. You can't have broken stones. So it says the Gemara, Ninzerinhu, if we cut them to complete pieces, not broken pieces, Lo tanif alehem barzel, amar Rachmana. The pasuk says you cannot have barzel on them. You cannot use any metal instrument on Mizbeach. Right? That's why you had the worm of Shamir that would go on it and it would cut them straight and so on and so forth to be avanim shelemot without barzel. So says the Gemara, you can't do that either. Ve'amai. The Gemara says, why can't you use them? What you should do is should break them, and once they're no longer Avodah Zarah, Tikrovet Avodah Zarah, again vessels Avodah, you could take them home for yourself and build them in your houses. What's the problem? Why do you have to do geniza on them? Why can't you just use them for building a house, whatever? So it says the Gemara, if you told me that is chol, they became chulin, you should be able to use them for chol. The Gemara says, we also find Milo Amar Avoshaya Bikshu Lignos Kol Kesef Zahav Shba'olam Mishum Kasva V'Dava Shel Yerushalayim. The same similar situation is what to do with gold and silver that was in Yerushalayim. Because remember, when the Romans came and destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, they took all the hekdesh that was in the Gizbar, in the treasure house of the Beit HaMikdash. They're all hekdesh. And Chazal said, wait a second, maybe we should answer all the gold and silver that's in the world, because the rov, the majority of the kesef zahav was hekdesh, and now you can't use it. And the Gemara says, we ask the question, what? The majority of the gold and silver in the world is hekdesh? That's of course not true, right? Take a look at Fort Knox. Says the Gemara, Haruba de Alma El Amar Abaye, first white line. It says, no, not that. Bikshuli gnos dinara de hadariana aturaina. The old coins in Yerushalayim that were used in the time of the Beit HaMikdash were the Roman coins of Hadarianus and Turainanus, and those ones, the old kings, those are the gold and silver coins that were used, and the majority of coins in Yerushalayim actually were hekdesh. Those coins, and they wanted to say, well, maybe we should answer all of that type of coin, because the majority of that coin was kept in the Gizbar of the Beit HaMikdash, and they were all hekdesh. So you're dealing with rov of hekdesh, you can't. And the answer was the ones that were old, shifa, the surah was robbed off. Again, the Tosafot is different. We're trying to understand the simple meaning of the Gemara. Mipenet tav asher Yerushalayim. They wanted to say it's asur until they found this very pasuk that it should be mutar uba peritzim vechileluha, because when the goyim took over the Beit HaMikdash, that all became chulin. All the hekdesh now is chol, and therefore you're not doing any me'ilah behekdesh. Those coins are chulin right now, and you could take them home for yourself, no problem. So says the Gemara, same thing should be over here. The stones of the Beit HaMikdash, the Mizbeach, you should be able to break it. Well, so long as they're not considered Avodah Zarah anymore, when you're mebatel them from being Avodah Zarah, you should be able to take them home and build your house with them. Why do you have to do Genizah in Sfonit Mizrachit of the Lishka in the Azara? You hear a big question over here. Why do you have to do Genizah? We didn't do Genizah on those coins. Because of this pasuk of Bah Pritzim Vechilelua, they become schulin. Now it's mutar to use it. So use the stones of the Beit HaMikdash, of the Mizbeach rather. Says Gemara, no, it's different. Coins, they were never used for structural things in Beit HaMikdash. Someone doesn't see the coin and say, this coin was in the Beit HaMikdash. No. So as long as technically speaking there is no isur because it became chulin, you can use it. But the avnei Mizbeach that were actually used structurally in the Beit HaMikdash, hatam lo ishtameshu b'u legavoa. The coins were never used for gavoa. Hacha kevan ishtamesh b'u legavoa. Here, because they were put in the structure of the Beit HaMikdash, therefore lav orach arau leishtamush b'u hediot is not derech eretz, that the stone that was in Mizbeach should be used by a hediot, by a regular person in his home or whatever else he's going to use it for, and therefore, because of the disrespect, derech eretz, they put it in Genizah, not because it was asur, but it was because it's not considered derech eretz, and it's asur for that reason. We'll start